My name's Evan from the Lonely Stone podcast, and UFC 319 just took place, and I'm going to be going over every single fight, as this is one of the few cards I actually watched live from start to finish. The first few fights, I would say that the first two I weren't paying too much attention to because I was doing a couple other things at the same time, but I did more or less watch every single fight on this card, so buckle up because it's probably going to be a decently long video, and the main event's probably going to get quite a lot of time out of me. So I'm going to start with Joseph Morales versus Alibi Idris. I think this was the tough finale, and I think Chael's guy won on the Chael versus DC one. Again, I didn't pay too much attention to this, but it seemed like a fairly even fight. I know Joseph Morales was a decent underdog, and this is his second run in the UFC now. And yeah, he got the second round triangle choke. Well done to him. I don't even know what this is. Flyweight. Okay, no, flyweight. Flyweight needs some interesting fighters. Flyweight has been growing recently, and flyweight can always do with some more interesting fighters. So if this guy is able to put together a little streak against some unranked contenders, he might be able to do some work. But I'm not going to pretend as if he looked world class or anything. He looked okay. The other guy looked okay, and he ended up getting a submission in the second round. And he looked to have got the submission with a decent amount of ease, to be fair. But I don't have too much to say about this one. I didn't pay too much attention to it. I was back and forth. So I'll move on to the next one, which is Kareem Silva versus Dion Barboza. From what I could tell, Dion Barboza was having more dominant moments and more the dominant grappling. And I think she probably won the first and third round. And she lost this by unanimous decision. But it was close. So I'm not going to scream robbery because people can interpret rounds differently. So again, it's not something I have too much to say about because ultimately I don't really care that much about the women's divisions in MMA. It doesn't appeal to me so much. So yeah, I don't have too much to say. Dion Barboza probably should have won, but Kareem Silva did. She was the ranked contender. It is what it is. Moving to the next one, Dricus Close versus Edson Barboza. Now watching this fight, right, before this card, I had watched Nick Ball versus I think Sam Goodman and Moses Atalma versus Dillian White, and the Nick Ball fight was basically a war, and in the Moses Atalma fight he absolutely finished him very quickly, and I've really enjoyed those. And then I watch a fight like this wasn't even a bad fight, but I see the technique difference and I almost think to myself, like, a lot of the technique in MMA is like so, like, it's not evolved that much. Like a guy like Edson Barboza, even though him and Dricus Close are around the same age, like, he's been the exact same fighter the entire time, and now he's just older and he's worse physically, and his kicks don't have the kind of snap and speed on them like they used to. And a guy like Dricus Close, who's been about the block and is a scrappy guy, is able to put the pressure on Edson Barboza, take his best shots, because Edson Barboza's best shots aren't that dangerous anymore. And essentially, put the pressure on him, win a unanimous 29-28 decision. It's not that hard to beat Barboza these days. I feel like if you give him loads of respect and space, then he'll land those kicks and he'll get his damage off. But a guy like Dricus Close, he wasn't giving him the respect. He put the pressure on. He landed some nice shots, and Edson Barboza did land some nice shots back as well. It was a decently competitive fight. I'm not sure if Edson Barboza's just come back up to lightweight or if he's been back at lightweight for a little bit, but this was a lightweight fight, and you could tell that these days he's pretty small for a lightweight. And back in the day, he would have been one of the more powerful, bigger lightweights. So I think that kind of goes to show the evolution of the division. And yeah, Dricus Close got that done by unanimous decision. This fight was a bit baffling for me because they're both older guys, and a win for either of them doesn't really do too much. So maybe it was just to get somebody off a losing streak or to sort of just fill up the card, because Dricus Close is 37 years of age, and he was coming off a loss to Joe Alvarez, but he was on a win streak before that. So maybe if he can get in there, like fight somebody just outside the rankings, get another win, he might be able to fight somebody in the top 15, which he'd probably lose, to be honest. But yeah, that's the early prelims. I wasn't paying the most attention to these fights, so I don't have the absolute most to say about them. But the Dricus Close Edson Barboza fight was okay. Honestly, I didn't see too much of the tough finale fight. I just saw the finish. And then the women's fight I don't really care about. And now the fights after this I was kind of paying attention to. So Alexander Hernandez defeating Chase Hooper by knockout in the first round. It says TKO here, but I mean, it was a TKO, but it was more of a knockout. Chase Hooper, his game plan was all wrong for this fight because as we know, his strength is on the ground. And not to say he didn't shoot a takedown, because he did shoot multiple takedowns, and they were just from so far out that Alex Hernandez was easily able to, not even had to stuff them. All he had to do was take a step back, and then he was completely out of range of Chase Hooper's takedown attempts. I mean, he was like ducking, he was like shooting Ben Askren takedowns, Chase Hooper. So, and that's why he wasn't really able to get any successful grappling off. And then when they were in tight, he wouldn't really go for clinches. So even though he had a huge height and reach advantage on Alexander Hernandez, and he was using that in the striking a little bit to his advantage, but for the most part, he was marching forward. He was trying to inside fight with the guy who's shorter than him and who's more of a power puncher. I didn't make an official pick for this fight, but I would have picked Chase Hooper to win. I would have picked him to be to apply more pressure in the clinch and grappling, get the fight down, and potentially submit Alex Hernandez or win a unanimous decision through the grappling. But instead, Alexander Hernandez was able to find his timing, was able to find the chin of Chase Hooper right at the end of the first round. And Chase Hooper went down pretty badly. And then Alexander Hernandez got on top, landed a few shots of ground and pound, and that was it. And I see some people saying early finish, is only a second left of the round, let it go. Chase Hooper was done. He went down instantly into a sprawl position, covered up. Alexander Hernandez landed multiple ground and pound shots. For me, it doesn't matter whether there's 1 second left or 3 minutes left. If you're curling up in a ball and it looks like you're not intelligently defending yourself, then the fight should be stopped, in my opinion. And it's really as simple as that. Alexander Hernandez was timing shots well when Chase Hooper was coming in. He was finding that chin, and Chase Hooper was taking the shots until he wasn't, pretty much. Good win for Alexander Hernandez. And I see some people saying, now is his time because he's not old and like he has a decent build for 155, I guess, and he has power and he has a decent grappling base. But I think he's not really going to go anywhere. He'll be this outside the rankings, beat guys who are obviously worse than him, and then lose to guys who are obviously better than him. He's always been that sort of fighter. Leave it all out there, try and knock someone out. He's not doing anything complex or anything amazing. He's just throwing the big meaty hooks. Not even hooks because he landed a straight on Chase Hooper. It was a very impressive win. I'm not trying to take anything away from Alexander Hernandez. It was an impressive win against a guy who had a decent amount of hype and was on a good win streak. So Alexander Hernandez probably should be looking for someone just outside the lightweight rankings. Hell, maybe he could fight a Barboza or Drakkar Klose himself if he hasn't already. I'm not sure. But moving on to the next one, Lupita Godinez versus Jessica Andrade. Again, a decently close fight. I mean, it was quite a classic case of the outside striker versus the inside striker. Even though they're height-wise and reach-wise, I don't think they were too different. Lupita Godinez was landing her jab, was landing some nice straight punches and then getting out of range. But in the first round, she pretty much completely outscored Jessica Andrade, and Jessica Andrade was finding it really difficult to find her range and land shots. But then in the second and third round, the second round was closer, but I still had it to Lupita Godinez, and in the third round, I think I had to Jessica Andrade because she just completely outdamaged Lupita Godinez. But Jessica Andrade was eventually finding her range and landing those inside hooks because she pretty much exclusively throws hooks and some leg kicks. And it's those Wanderlei Silva hooks as well. It's just left, right, open stance sort of hooks. And if they're able to land, I mean, we saw years ago she'd land those on the girls and they'd go down. But these days, I guess it's a bit different. I think she has to be quite old. She's 33, which is kind of on the back end of a women's career because a lot of these women retire quite early, unless you're Holly Holm. But yeah, Jessica Andrade was eventually able to find her range in the fight, but I think she was sort of too far behind at that point. And back in the day, she would have been able to finish the girls, but these days, a bit past her prime, probably not. But credit to Lupita Godinez, though. She has to take those shots still, and she did. So it was a good win for her. I don't really know the women's fighters, so I don't know who she'd be fighting next or whatever, but that's my breakdown of that fight. Moving on to the next one, Michael Oleksiejczuk, my Polish brother. Yes, my Polish brother. Lovely. Defeating Gerald Meerschaert by first round TKO. Easy win for Michael Oleksiejczuk. He was pretty much piecing up Gerald on the feet, and then Gerald would just flop to his back and then hope that Oleksiejczuk would jump in and so he could find a submission. But Oleksiejczuk never did it because he has a certain level of IQ. And eventually, he landed a really nice three-punch combination, finishing with a left straight, I think. He put him down, landed some nice hammer fists. Probably could have been stopped a few strikes earlier because GM3 was sort of just in that same position on his side, holding hammer fist after hammer fist after hammer fist. So it probably could have been stopped a little bit earlier. But it was a fairly standard win for Michael Oleksiejczuk. Michael Oleksiejczuk is good, man. He's probably one of the better middleweights outside the rankings. But I think he does kind of lose to people because he gets into a bit of a war. And obviously his grappling isn't where he likes to take the fights. And if he had grappling exchanges with GM3, then GM3 might have had chances to find submissions. But he wasn't even allowing GM3 to initiate in the grappling and wasn't following him down to the ground. So really, not a good win because a guy like him should be beating Gerald Meerschaert. But the way he did it means, okay, that's what we needed from you. On to the next one. Obviously, we know he lost to Shara Bullet. He lost to Kevin Holland by submission. I think he broke his arm. Lost to Michel Pereira. And then before that, lost to Caio Baralho, so by submission. So just put him up against a striker, man. Just put him up against a striker. Let's see some good, because Michael Oleksiejczuk is a fun fighter. And then he looks for finishes. So let's put him up against a striker in the middleweight division. And he's on a nice little 2-fight win streak now. And he's my Polish brother. So I want to see him. I want to see him back in there because he didn't really take any damage at all. So definitely back in there before the end of the year for Michael Oleksiejczuk. Good performance. Not a great win because GM3 isn't a great win, but fair enough. He's my Polish brother. I love it. Now for the prelim main event, which is Bayasengor Sasakayev defeating Eric Nolan. This was a scrap, man. This was a scrap. The first round, I gave to Eric Nolan because even though Sasakayev was probably outlanding him in that round, right at the end, Eric Nolan landed a big right hand and put Bayasengor on chicken legs. Now, this is not a good start for Bayasengor Sasakayev because, as we know, if you know anything about him, they promoted the hell out of him because, and there's a reason why he main evented the prelims on 4 days' notice because 4 days before UFC 319, he won on the contender series and then called to be on the same fight as Khamzat because he's Khamzat's boy. And his performance was not that impressive. He ended up getting the rear naked choke in the second round because Eric Nolan pretty much gassed out. He took the fight on a few days' notice. The guy gassed out. He started. He was taking a lot of body shots from Sasakayev. That front kick of Sasakayev to the body is probably his most impressive weapon, which I think is what he got the finish with on the Dana White Contender Series. So that's probably Bayasengor Sasakayev's best weapon. He was utilizing that against Eric Nolan, utilizing some body work and kicks. And even though the first round I've probably had him losing, in the second round he was able to apply more pressure, take advantage of Eric Nolan's gas state, and eventually get the rear naked choke. He had the back flat position. He was landing big ground and pound on the ground. Eric Nolan trying to get out, eventually found the neck, and then submitted him. So it wasn't an impressive win because he faced a lot of adversity against what was supposed to be more of a layup fight in his debut. And even though he did get the finish, I feel like that finish might paper over a lot of the cracks. So a lot of people would say, yeah, he finished him in the second round. This guy's up next. It's middleweight, to be fair. So a guy like, for example, like you look at Dricus, who we'll get into later, by the way, but a guy like Dricus, who didn't really look too good in many of his fights coming up, ended up being a world champion of multiple title defenses. So I'm not totally writing him off, but it's just not the best look, against a guy who it's your UFC debut. It's supposed to be a bit of a layup. You know, he's a guy he fight that didn't have a ton of experience, but he was there. He was there to fight, and that the same can't be said for a lot of fighters in the middleweight division. To actually be there to fight, hit someone, and get hit back. But and also what I want to say about Chimaev, I feel like he was doing too much to make sure that like he had his aura. Like, I don't know, he kept like smiling and nodding at Eric Nolan, and then even after the fight, like he was like, "Oh, Dana White does not know how to say my name. Chicago, let's help him. 1, 2, 3. Baisango, Baisango." Like, and then no one said his name. No one did the chant with him, and it was really, really cringe. And then even on his walk back, he was like high-fiving every crowd member. He was taking it all in. Like, I'm not saying you can't do that, right? But it just seemed like he was taking in the UFC experience more than he was actually focusing on his own fight. And, you know, to be fair, it was on 4 days' notice. He fought 4 days before and then fought on this card. So, and it's middleweight, so, like, none of this is the worst thing in the world, right? Because he can still be good. He can still become a ranked contender. But I just feel like he's one of those guys, you know, he's focused more on aura farming and being stoic and that sort of stuff. Kind of like Patchy Mix a little bit. But decent. I mean, I don't know anything about this Eric Nolan guy. I think that was probably his UFC debut as well. He won. They'll get him another layup fight in his next one, probably on a main card of a pay-per-view or something, because they love these guys. But now I'll move on to the main card. This opening fight of the main card was a fucking strange one. Tim Elliott, 38-year-old Tim Elliott, defeating Kai Asakura, who's probably like 31 or 32 in the prime of his career, by submission mounted guillotine in the second round. The first round, Tim Elliott was moving around like a retard. He was trying to be Dominic Cruz, and I don't think he landed a single significant strike on the feet in the first round, Tim Elliott. He was getting completely outboxed by Kai Asakura. Kai Asakura had the speed advantage, he had the footwork advantage. In and out movement, he was landing on Tim Elliott, and I think he did actually hurt him a couple of times as well. But Kai Asakura didn't really seem to notice that Tim Elliott was hurt, or Tim Elliott was just able to recover quite quickly and hide a lot of the damage that he ended up taking. And in the second round, it was kind of more of the same. It was more of the same from Kai Asakura. And then Tim Elliott started shooting takedowns, and there was just absolutely zero defense on these takedowns. You know, when you see like a guy shoot for a takedown, and then the guy will just go flying up in the air from the takedown because he was just not expecting it at all. That was every single takedown attempt. Tim Elliott shoot the takedown, instantly get him down, would like wrap his arms around his legs and pretty much get to the position he wanted. Kai Asakura has zero grappling knowledge. I mean, to be getting taken down the way he was by Tim Elliott and then almost instantly guillotine choked when, I mean, he was on his back in like a side, like, I don't know what you call it, like kind of on one knee, on his back kind of, and then he tried to get up and he just completely exposed his neck to Tim Elliott. Just completely exposed his neck to Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott jumped on the guillotine, transitioned into a mounted guillotine, and he actually held it for a little while, held it for a good 20 to 30 seconds. Eventually, Kai Asakura tapping. I don't think I made an official pick for this one, but I would have picked Kai Asakura because, let's face it, he should just win this fight. I mean, I see people now, right, saying, yeah, Pantoja's the flyweight GOAT, DJ's era of flyweights were trash. Well, Demetrius Johnson's title defense from like 10 years ago just beat Pantoja's second most recent title defense. So I personally don't really want to hear it. I don't think the sport is evolving as much as people think in the last 5 to 10 years. I think we've kind of reached the ceiling with MMA, where unless you have certain well-roundedness, you're going to lose. You need to be able to stop certain things in a fight. And if you can't stop yourself getting taken down and submitted by a guy like Tim Elliott, what hope do you have? And in my opinion, this was supposed to be a bit of a layup for Kai Asakura. I think they looked in the top 15, 10 to 15, and thought, okay, who's not a rising contender and probably the easiest fight for Kai Asakura? And they found Tim Elliott. And Tim Elliott, to be honest, smoked him. Tim Elliott smoked him. He was moving like a retard in the first round. I don't think he landed anything of significance on Kaya Sakura in the first round. Kaya Sakura was piecing him up, easy 10-9 in the first round, and he was winning the second round. But Tim Elliott was easily able to take him down, easily able to control him on the ground, and easily submits him with the first submission attempt he tried. So I don't feel bad for Kaya Sakura, to be honest. I don't, because you just gotta have better grappling defense than that, and that will also be a point to talk about in the main event. But for me, you have to do better than that. It's not really, for me. I'm not gonna violate Tim Elliott because he should do what he has to do to win. If I had a list of 3 game plans, and one was a way higher percentage chance of winning than the others, I would do it. As a fighter, I would do it. Fuck what everyone else says. So credit to Tim Elliott. He saw out the first round. He found the grappling and then submitted Kaya Sakura. Similarly sort of to how Pantoja did. But yeah, I mean, Tim Elliott will probably look for like a top 9, top 8 opponent who will probably lose to because he's 38 years old at flyweight. Kaya Sakura, you know what? Just get him out. Like, I don't have time for these type of guys who, you put them against a striker and they'll win, they'll beat anyone. But then as soon as they face someone with even a little bit of grappling, they're just going to lose. I don't have time for these sort of fights in MMA because you're just going to give me false hope. You could be a good striker. Just go kickbox or go to one championship Muay Thai or something. Mentally, I don't have time for these guys. Like, Kaya Sakura did look good in the striking. Very good. Like, his punching form is very good. His knees are very good. Even some of his clinch work is quite good. But when someone's going to dominate in the striking for 8 minutes and then get taken down once or twice and then get submitted, piss off. Like, it is MMA. Like, you have to be good everywhere. And Kaya Sakura wasn't. Tim Elliott, I would say once he got the grappling going, it was a fairly easy victory for him. It was quite easy. And there's quite a few grapplers at flyweight, so I don't think Kaya Sakura should be fighting a ranked opponent next. I think he should be going pretty much back to the start. He should fight somebody who's had a couple of fights in the UFC unranked. And at this point, I don't care whether you give him a striker or a grappler. Give him whoever. I don't care about Kaya Sakura. The guy's 0-2 in the UFC and he had a ranking spot to his name. I could care less, to be honest. Like, exciting on the feet, but if you're not going to be able to even defend the grappling from Tim Elliott, then what's the point? Just do one. Now moving on, Michael Venom Page defeating Jared Cannonier by unanimous decision. That's exactly what it was, a unanimous decision. Michael Page won the first and second round, lost the third, and you could clearly see where Jared Cannonier saw how to win and then started doing it, but it was a bit too late. The first round, as me and Seth sort of broke down in our predictions on the pod, Michael Venom Page just has to be uber elusive, land his very quick 1-2 that he's known to do, and then make Cannonier miss. And this is exactly how he fought in the first round. He wasn't the most active. He was landing his jab. He was landing straight to the body. He was landing a 1-2 to the head. And Cannonier's footwork, he wasn't really able to cut him off. Michael Venom Page was very fast, had the reach and height advantage and the footwork advantage. And he made Jared Cannonier look quite silly in the first round. And he also, I don't know if it counted as a knockdown, but he kind of like caught him off balance with a straight. He was up on one leg. He caught Cannonier off balance. Cannonier went down, but he didn't look hurt really. So I don't know if it's more of an off balance thing. I don't know if they counted as a knockdown, but it looked significant. And then a similar sort of thing happened in the second round where Michael Venom Page like caught him with like a 2-1 or 1-2 and then sort of pushed him down with his fist, kind of. It was a bit weird. It looks significant, so that's probably why he was able to win that second round. But about halfway through the second round, Cannonier was finding that he could hold MVP up against the cage, and when he got him to the ground, MVP was not able to get up at all. Cannonier had a clear strength advantage in this fight, and he just about didn't win the second round because MVP did land what he landed on the feet before he got taken down. And yeah, if Cannonier had had 5 rounds, he probably would have won, to be fair, because in the third round, he pretty much held him for the entire third round. It did, to his credit, attempted a couple of submissions, but he was trapped in half guard. MVP was tying up that leg. MVP wasn't really trying to get up too much. He did try and get up. That's a lie. He was trying to get up, but Jared Cannonier had the wrestling advantage, strength advantage. But just wasn't... He tried to land some nice elbows, Cannonier, but he wasn't being active enough in the clinch and ground and pound to take those rounds. I mean, I even think in the second round, if he had been way more active in the clinch with, body punches, knees to the body, some dirty boxing, if he'd have been much more active with that, he might have damn well taken that second round and then would have won the third and probably won his own unanimous decision. But that wasn't the case. Michael Venom Page won this by unanimous decision, which it's better for MVP to win, because Cannonier would have just gone and fought somebody and then probably lost. So he probably would have fought like a Delidze or something and lost. So good win for MVP, very good win against a top 10 ranked contender at middleweight. MVP should be looking to fight somebody who's not going to grapple him, because now that Cannonier's kind of laid out the game plan, now Cannonier's laid out that game plan, anyone with a decent bit of IQ, strength, and a grappling background, not even a background, but with grappling, with the will to grapple, anyone with the will to grapple is going to find success against MVP. So MVP should look to fight exclusively strikers, but at middleweight, there's a few guys there that will mix up. If he was to fight Anthony Hernandez, he would lose. If he was to fight, a Brendan Allen, he would lose. So MVP has to look for certain matchups and not get the wrong ones, because if he gets the right matchup here, and maybe one more after that, he might get a title shot. But at this point, who wants to fight the middleweight champion? So yeah, as we'll get into that later. But good win from MVP. Should be looking to fight somebody in the top 6 probably. Hopefully a striker, but we'll have to wait and see. Now moving on to the real shit. Carlos Prates versus defeating Jeff Neal by KO in the first round, right at the end of the round, spinning elbow. This was vintage Prates. I say vintage Prates as if he's not been in the UFC for not even 2 years yet, but this is what I predicted. I thought Prates was going to come into this fight and look like his old self. I didn't think he was going to be gun shy because of that Ian Gary fight. I didn't think he was going to hold back, and I didn't think that he would fight any differently due to the Ian Gary loss, and he didn't. He was using that elusive in and out movement, ripping to the body, elbows, straight left hands. Prates was looking really good in this fight, and Jeff Neal, to his credit, was actually looking okay as well. He was landing some nice shots, some nice left hands, and as I stated in the podcast, you get two Jeff Neals. You get the Jeff Neal that comes to fight, or you get the Jeff Neal that loves being in the clinch and doesn't do nothing. And we got the Jeff Neal that came to fight. And because we got the Jeff Neal that came to fight, he ended up getting brutally spinning back elbowed right at the end of the round. And it was really, really crazy knockout. I mean, as I said, I watched this entire card live. So having seen the MVP fight, which wasn't exciting, the Tim Elliott fight, which was a bit disappointing, and then some of the prelims, which, the Bison Gore finish it was a bit of a dead fight, and then, yeah, it was a really, really brutal finish from Carlos Prates. The finishing sequence was he came in with a short upwards elbow, and Jeff Neal was almost turning away from the direction where the elbow came, and he kind of landed it where Jeff Neal wouldn't have been able to see it. So, and it wasn't as tight in as some of the other spinning elbows, but he landed it clean to the side of Jeff Neal's head, opened his head up badly, knocked him out. Wasn't like he was out, but he wasn't out cold. He was kind of with it, but he wasn't there. Really, really, really good win from Carlos Prates. Really good win. I'm not sure who would be fighting next. I think that was 12 versus 11. So maybe give him Delidze, who just lost to Anthony Hernandez. But yeah, Carlos Prates, he's good, man. Anyone wants to hang about on their feet with him, they're gonna have problems. It's not like an MVP where he'll just land a couple shots, move around for a couple of minutes. Prates, if you're getting in exchanges with him, he's gonna put you down. He's gonna put you down. Yeah. And this kind of speaks to how good Ian Gary is, because Ian Gary was able to be extremely elusive. I mean, he did grapple some, but he was, even in the striking, he was landing on Prates. He was being very, very elusive up until that 5th round. So, really, really stunning win from Carlos Prates. Amazing finish. Now moving on to Lerone Murphy versus Aaron Pico. Another spinning back elbow knockout. I remember when Carlos Prates knocked him out, they said that was the 9th spinning back elbow knockout in UFC history. And then we got the 10th in the very next fight. And this Lerone Murphy versus Aaron Pico fight was crazy. Because, I'll start off with this. I'll start off with Aaron Pico, right? Aaron Pico looked good. Aaron Pico looked quite good. And he looked a lot better than the other Bellator fighters. I would say he even looked better than Michael Chandler. Even though result-wise, the fight wasn't something that would happen to Michael Chandler. But he looked better than Pitbull did. He looked better than Patchy Mix did. And he looked better than most of Michael Chandler does in his fights. Instantly, he has this sort of lowered stance a little bit. And he loves to pressure forward. Instantly putting Lerone Murphy up against the cage and knocked him. It was similar to like the MVP fight. He knocked him off balance. Knocked him down off balance with a right hand and then landed some nice shots. And Aaron Pico is being extremely aggressive, and a lot of his grappling as well. He was having a very good success in the grappling. When he would pressure Lerone Murphy, he'd shoot very deep double leg, get it. He was able to control Lerone Murphy, but also Lerone Murphy was able to get back up a couple of times because Lerone Murphy's good, and this is by far the most tough fight. This is the best fight that Aaron Pico's fought in his career by miles. Undefeated, ranked 6th in the UFC. But Aaron Pico looked good. He was landing some nice body shots up against the cage as well. But this is kind of what ended up being his downfall, because his aggressiveness. Because he was constantly moving forward. If it was on the feet, he was moving forward. Never took one step back. Putting Lerone Murphy up against the cage, landing body shots, going for the takedowns. Being extremely aggressive to the point of carelessness. And this is what got him knocked out. Because there was a point where Lerone Murphy seemed to have caught him in the chest or the body with a knee coming in. And Lerone Murphy pointed this out after the fight. He said he knew Aaron Pico was going to come in very aggressively and he was going to try to catch him coming in. And that knee nearly did it. But I think that he ended up taking Lerone Murphy down off of that. Got back up. Aaron Pico again. One thing I want to say about Aaron Pico, he was pressuring, but he was also he wasn't finding his range. He was throwing these straight punches, pressuring Lerone Murphy, throwing these straight punches, but just not being in the correct range to land it. And I think this allowed Lerone Murphy to find his timing and range a bit better, because this fight only went about 3 minutes, but Aaron Pico was coming in. He slipped to the side where Lerone Murphy threw the elbow. A much more tight spinning elbow than the Prates one, in tight close range. Landed it to the side of the head, knocked Pico out cold. And me and Seth definitely did not see this coming. We thought this was going to be a Murphy decision where he'd defend the grappling of Pico, outland him on the feet with kicks and strikes from range, and I didn't think Pico was actually going to look this good. I mean, that sounds weird considering he got knocked out in a few minutes, but that's kind of the way Pico fights. He's just extremely aggressive, looks for the finish or gets finished. And he pretty much might be the Michael Chandler of the featherweight division. And it's a shame that he didn't get a more favourable matchup in his debut. Because if he did, then he would have looked very good and he would have got some hype on him. Because he did look good. Up until he got knocked out, he did look good. He was winning the round. Easily winning the round. He was applying shitloads of pressure to Lerone Murphy. Then Lerone Murphy caught him with an absolute stunning KO with a spinning elbow. He called for a title shot. Volkanovski said, "See you in December," Lerone Murphy. So it seems like Lerone Murphy didn't take loads of damage. Fight only went a few minutes, so it looks like Lerone Murphy's going to be back in December against Volk. Fuck Movsar. Definitely fuck Yair. I kind of feel sorry for Mobsar, but when you got a guy like Lerone Murphy who's undefeated as well, and he just spinning back elbowed someone like that brutally in a co-main event of a pay-per-view, what can you really do? You can't really give Mobsar the title fight now, especially after he pulled out in this fight against Aaron Pico. And thank God he did, because this fight would have been a bore fest with that. Because I think Evloev, it would have been tough because Pico is a good grappler, but I think Evloev would have just been better than him and would have held him in certain positions. I'm really hesitant. I'm really like stalling out because I don't want to move on to the main event. But Lerone Murphy, man, British guy. Them Leon Edwards comparisons, I mean, they ain't looking too tough now. Lerone Murphy's good, man. Lerone Murphy's good. He has a legit chance against Volkanovski. I think Volkanovski's best bet is pretty much to use his speed and in and out movement on the feet, and also mix in the grappling. I would pick Volk in that fight. I would pick Volk because even though Lerone Murphy did just finish Aaron Pico, I don't think he has finishing potential against Volk because he doesn't have the power. He doesn't have the power of a Diego Lopez, and Volk was able to take Lopez's best shot. And he definitely doesn't have the boxing and the power of Ilia Topuria to put out Alexander Volkanovski. But I'll be looking forward to this fight regardless because it's an undefeated British contender fighting a guy like Volk who's always amazing to watch. So I think we're going to see that later in the year. I don't know if it's an Australia card or what, but yeah, that should definitely be up next. Lerone Murphy took this fight on a few weeks' notice because Movsar pulled out and he got stunning back elbow knockout. And for Aaron Pico, look, right, it's not a good start being a highlight reel in the first few minutes of your UFC career, but this guy has talent. If this guy can adjust his game plan in a little bit, which to be honest I don't think he will because he doesn't seem like the type of fighter, but if he can adjust his game plan in a bit, be a bit more patient and not be so defensively irresponsible, he can definitely make a name for himself in this featherweight division because he does have some really good striking on him and his grappling is good enough to be able to combat a lot of the grapplers in the division. I would not give him a ranked opponent next. He's only 28 years old. Give him somebody outside the rankings that you can put on a highlight reel. And give him somebody else outside the rankings who you can put on a highlight reel. And then start moving him into the rankings. But in all likelihood, I think that what they'll do is the pitbull method. Where they're just going to give him another ranked opponent. And probably hope that he loses. Which I wouldn't really think is fair. But Aaron Pico, if you're able to put him against a couple favourable matchups, he's able to get a couple highlight reels because that's what he does. He highlight reels or gets highlight reeled. I do think he has talent. Just give him a couple nice matchups because he can make money for the UFC, 100%. Oh, okay. Now moving on to the main event, Khamzat Chimaev defeating Dricus du Plessis by unanimous decision. I am going to preface this breakdown with this. What Khamzat did was super impressive. Able to hold Dricus for well over 20 minutes and basically was able to completely shut out Dricus du Plessis. Dricus du Plessis in the first 4 rounds had 0 moments. 0 moments in the first 4 rounds. Didn't do a single thing in the first 4 rounds. In the first 4 rounds, the fight was probably on the feet for a combined 50 seconds. In the first 20 minutes of this fight, the fight was probably on the feet for around 40 seconds or 50 seconds, maybe a minute. And Khamzat Chimaev was extremely dominant in his takedowns. I think in the first 3 or 4 rounds, I don't think Dricus stuffed a takedown. I don't think Dricus stuffed one takedown, and Khamzat Chimaev was able to impose his will on Dricus with absolute ease. Very, very impressive what he was able to do to Dricus because I thought that there was going to be much more resistance in the grappling from Dricus. But Khamzat was able to implement his game plan, what he wanted to do, and the judges only gave it a 50-44. I think the first 3 rounds, probably even the first 4 rounds, I think, were 10-8s. And it seems like the definition of a 10-8 is, complete shutout. And those first 4 rounds were complete shutouts. Dricus didn't do a single damn thing in those first 4 rounds. I mean, even if Khamzat didn't get off any damage or submission attempts, if he's completely and utterly shutting out Dricus, then it has to be a 10-8, right? So in my personal opinion, those first 4 rounds, maybe 3 rounds, in my opinion, first 4 rounds were 10-8s. And then the 5th round, Dricus was able to do a lot more was able to like reverse some grappling situations. The fight got stood up a couple of times, landed some on the feet, and even had a submission attempt of his own in the 5th round. So, I mean, it was a round at which Khamzat still won, by the way, the 5th round. So, in my opinion, this was a 50-41. But I just don't think they wanted to kind of embarrass the sport in that way, having a world champion get 50-41. That wasn't going to happen. And because the first round, like, I think he probably landed like over 150 strikes in the first round. So that's probably why they didn't have it be such a dominant scorecard in that way, because the first round was much more of a clear 10-8 than the other rounds were. Now I've given Khamzat the praise that I can, I'm going to go and say that this was the most boring title fight main event I've seen since Tyron Woodley versus Damian Maia. And that was probably back in like 2016. And that fight was boring as fuck, where for the most part Woodley wasn't initiating any grappling and he was just staring at Maia because he didn't want to get taken down, even though realistically there was zero chance of Maia being able to take him down. But regardless, that's not the fight I'm talking about. I'm talking about Khamzat versus Dricus. Now, to have 22 to 23 minutes of control time in a 25 round fight, not attempt one submission and land less than 30 significant strikes is an absolute embarrassment. That is an embarrassment, right, to the sport. The fact that guy just won a 5-round world championship title fight without putting Dricus in any real danger. Dricus was in no real danger throughout this entire fight. He was being held and wet blanketed the entire fight. Now, I said this to Seth earlier, but two things can be true at the same time. This can be an impressive performance from Khamzat, and it can also be one of the most boring fights you've ever seen. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. In this fight, they're both true. What Khamzat did was extremely impressive, and it was also extremely boring. And also something has to be said for Dricus, because that was embarrassing from Dricus. That was really bad. He wasn't able to stop any of the takedowns until like the 5th round, and he wasn't able to get up like at all. And essentially, the majority of this fight was either Khamzat in a behind body lock against the cage, landing knees to the body and the thigh, or he was in side control crucifix, and because Dricus was like turning his head into it, if Khamzat was going to punch him, then it would have been to the back of the head, so he couldn't really punch him in that crucifix. But he would just land these like literally 1-inch punches, like tip tap shots that would not hurt a fly. And it middleweight's cooked, right? Middleweight's fucking cooked, because not only is Khamzat going to fight once a year, but he's going to do this to absolutely everybody. Not one man at middleweight has the ability to stop this happening to them. Not one man. And you know, welterweight, that's a different conversation. I'll get onto that in a little bit, actually, the welterweights, but no middleweight on the planet has a chance of stopping this. Not one. You know, Khamzat was not attempting to finish this fight, was not even attempting to do damage to Dricus, because Dricus did not take any damage in this fight. His face was marked up. Of course, his face was marked up because he was being like tippy-tappy shotted for the entire time. And Khamzat did land probably around 6 or 7 really nice ground and pound shots throughout the entire fight. Probably like a couple elbows from crucifix were really good. But Khamzat clearly had no desire to finish. And he was fighting in a way in which he would not get gassed, because if you're just holding a body lock on Dricus the entire time, anytime he tries to get up, you just shock him back down. You're not going to get gassed out that way, because you're on top of him and you're not working, really. And this is not to say that Dricus couldn't have done more to do this to Khamzat, because he definitely could have. Dricus could have gained a guard back, could have been working, could have made Khamzat work a bit more. But what it ended up being was that Khamzat was just holding him the entire fight. And honestly, Khamzat made Merab look like Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler exchanges with guys, exchanges with guys, and even though he is also constantly shooting takedowns, he's not holding people there the way Khamzat was. And you know, obviously we all said Khamzat's only way of winning is by finishing the first or second round, and that's clearly not what happened, because he won a 5-round unanimous decision, which I thought was a 50-41. But he wasn't fighting how he usually does. How Khamzat usually fights is that he blows his entire load, trying to finish you. And he was not trying to do this. He had think about this, court. He had 23 minutes of control time, did not attempt a submission. Did not attempt one submission. And landed less than 30 significant strikes. Landed about a significant strike per minute in the fight. Now, if anyone's able to give me a reasonable argument how that is a good way or reasonable way to win a fight, or that's entertaining to watch, then I'll say fair enough, you enjoy that. But I've not seen one person online yet that is able to give a reasonable argument as to why that should even exist in the sport. You know, why should a world champion, I mean, don't get me wrong, do not get me wrong, Dricus should be doing more. Dricus should be doing more to stop what Khamzat's doing to him, because at the end of the day, if you can't stop what Khamzat's doing, a lot of it is on you, right? I'm not blaming, at this point, I'm not blaming sort of the UFC for allowing this to happen, because this is the fight game, or the fight, in quotation marks, fight game, even though this was not a fight, this was a wrestling match. You have to be able to stop it. Dricus has to be able to stop it. And he wasn't able to stop it once. I mean, obviously in the 5th round when Khamzat was clearly tired, and Dricus, I mean, he looked tired, but he didn't look much more tired than he did in the 1st or 2nd round. And he was able to actually get off some damage and attempted his own. Think about this. Khamzat had 23 minutes of control time, and the submission attempts were 1-0 for Dricus. That's absurd. That's crazy. That's fucking crazy. And I'm sitting here at 5:30 in the morning watching this. I'm watching this at 5:30 in the morning in the UK. I've been up since like 9. I've been up since 9 a.m. the morning before. And I'm here at 5:30 watching Khamzat wet blanket Dricus and not even think about attempting to finish the fight. Didn't even think about attempting to finish it. And this fight is really exposing all of the fake hardcores, because I'm looking in comment sections, I'm looking on Twitter, I'm looking on Reddit. Oh, if you want to see striking, watch boxing. You know, if you want to see, watch kickboxing. Well, I want to watch MMA. That's not MMA. I want to watch MMA. That was not MMA. That was not MMA. That was a man holding another man in place for 25 minutes. Nobody took damage in that fight. Dricus did not take damage. Khamzat did not take damage. Nobody got hurt. Like, if I was Dricus, I'd be walking out of that fight thinking I didn't even feel like I lost, because he didn't take no damage. Khamzat landed a significant strike per minute and didn't attempt a single submission. I mean, sometimes I feel like when it comes to the grappling, we have to implore these grapplers to be more aggressive. I mean, I'm not saying stand with Dricus. That's far from what I'm saying, because I enjoy grappling. For example, like there's like even Islam, for example, is an exciting grappler. Charles Oliveira is an exciting grappler. These guys, they get you on the ground and they're looking for finishes. Khamzat is not looking for a finish. He's not. And you might say to me, why should he? Because he's going to win this way. And I would say, fair enough. This is what I said earlier, you know. It doesn't make it not impressive, because he still has to do it to Dricus. And Dricus has to defend it, and he didn't. So, in that sense, fair enough to Khamzat, because you still have to get it off, right? You still have to do it, which is why it's impressive. But if anybody tells you that they enjoyed this fight, they're lying. They're lying. They're just lying. I'm genuinely seeing people saying, well, I enjoyed that. That was dominant grappling. Dominant grappling? What, holding a man in place for 25 minutes? That's not enjoyable. And I'll keep saying it. It was impressive. It was impressive, because I don't think anybody is just doing that to Dricus. And Khamzat is like amazing wrestling, amazing positional control. But other than that, nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Now, for me, middleweight might as well not even exist. Robert Whittaker's outside the top 5 now, and Khamzat's the champ. Khamzat's going to fight once a year, and he's going to do this to everybody until he retires, and that's genuinely it. Nobody in this middleweight division has a single modicum of chance of beating Khamzat. Khamzat's going to do this to everyone. He's about to be the most boring champion in MMA history. Even Khabib wasn't this boring. Even Khabib was landing brutal ground and pound on the ground and would strike with people. Khabib was extremely exciting compared to Khamzat. And you know what? I'm just happy it's middleweight, because middleweight's a shit division anyway. So, I really could give two shits. I think it isn't even about Khamzat or the middleweight division. It's about the sport. They've just signed a $7.7 billion deal with Paramount, and then this is the main event of the very next card. I mean, it's really the fake hardcores online as well. If you want to, like I said earlier, if you want to watch striking or watch kickboxing, this is MMA. That's not MMA. That is not MMA. That's wrestling. And in my opinion, just because somebody's landing tippy-tappy shots on the ground or has a dominant position doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to be stood up. I mean, I think they really need to redefine the rules on stalling out fights, because you might argue if he's able to do that to Dricus, why not let him? But it's entertainment at the end of the day, no? Again, it's not just I'm not asking them to strike. I understand Khamzat's a grappler. I expect him to grapple, and I think he should grapple. Definitely, he should grapple. A guy like Khamzat, who is as good of a wrestler as he is, should grapple everybody. But you can't tell me that he couldn't have done more to get damage off against Dricus. And in my eyes, if you can win a fight by not fighting, then the sport's cooked. I mean, we thought we were cooked with guys like Merab. Merab fights. Merab actually fights. Tries to finish people, even if he can't. Merab actually fucking fights. But this is something else. This is something completely different. Really, really disgusting, to be honest. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. Having watched Nick Ball versus Sam Goodman, the featherweight boxing world title fight, and then Moses Atama versus Dillian White, even quote-unquote boring fights in boxing are still extremely impressive to watch because of the technicality behind it. But there's nothing really too technical about this. It's just Khamzat, who's the superior wrestler, holding Dricus in place for 25 minutes. There's nothing exciting about that. There's nothing positive to take away from it. In fact, the only thing we can take away from it is that Khamzat's going to be back in probably February or March or something. If that, he's going to do this exact thing to Imamov or Baralho. And then I think people are going to realise, this isn't fun. And even a guy like, for example, the Pereira versus Ankalaev fight, the first one. Ankalaev was mostly using his grappling as a means to improve his striking, but that's not what Khamzat was doing at all. Because, fair enough, because Dricus, that wouldn't work with Dricus, right? Using your grappling to improve your striking, that's not going to work against Dricus, because Dricus doesn't mind being taken down. And he's going to strike the way he strikes regardless. But for Khamzat, I mean, look, I'm not going to talk about culture, and I'm not going to talk about where he's from and his fans and the people, because that's just not relevant to me, right? That's got nothing to do with the sport itself. However, there is a reason why the UFC wants these guys as champion, and it's because of a large fan base they have. Regardless of how they fight, regardless of how Khamzat fights or wins, he's going to have that fan base. He can have the most boring fight ever, like he just did, and all of those fans are going to be completely behind him because they're the same community. And I'm not saying I don't understand that, but it just makes for allowing these boring as fuck fighters to do what they want, and it's okay because they have fans. I mean, the thing that pisses me off, it's not even the fight that pisses me off the most, it's the people online acting like this was entertaining, or acting like you're a casual if you didn't enjoy that. If Khamzat was trying to get off ground and pound, attempted submissions, and being aggressive, I would have said that was a great fight and a great win from Khamzat and really exciting. But he wasn't. His clear goal was, okay, let me take down Dricus and let me just stall out the fight for as long as I can with expending as little energy as I can and win that way. And that's what happened. I don't want to go on about this for too much longer because it was so extremely boring. And like I said, it's the most boring title fight main event I've seen since Tyron Woodley versus Damian Maia, and that was also a fight I watched live and really regret. I remember sending snaps to my friend recording this fight saying Tyron Woodley's a bitch. Tyron Woodley's a bitch. He threw like 50 strikes the whole fight. He landed like 50 significant strikes the whole fight, man. I wish Khamzat landed 50 significant strikes, because he didn't even land half that, if you ask me. So, fuck Khamzat Chimaev. Like, fuck these guys that win fights by not winning fights, innit? Honestly. Like, it was impressive, and Dricus, it was a pathetic performance from Dricus. Two things can be true at the same time, right? Khamzat can have an impressive performance, but it can also be boring as fuck. There you go. I'm not hating. I don't want to sound like a hater, but it's what happened. It's just what happened. I don't have any desire to even talk about or think about this main event anymore. Shout out to Lerone Murphy and Carlos Prates, man. Those guys saved the card, honestly. And even MVP's fight was way more exciting compared to that. Even shout out Tim Elliott as well for actually trying to do something. And even shout out guys on the prelims. Shout out Alexander Hernandez. Shout out Drakkar Klose and Edson Barboza for actually fighting. Shout out Karim Silva and Dion Barboza for fighting. Shout out Joseph Morales and Alibi Idris for fighting. Shout out Michael Alexeychuk for actually fighting. Shout out Bison Gorsa Sukayev and Eric Nolan for actually fighting. These guys actually went into fights. Khamzat did not go into fight. He went into to hold someone in place for 25 minutes and win. And I could give two shits about what you have to say about my opinion of the fight. Again, like I said, it was impressive, and it was a pathetic performance from Dricus. And Khamzat is going to be able to do this to every single middleweight on the planet, and middleweight's cooked. Like I said, I don't really have much desire to think about this fight anymore. Shout out to everybody else on the card for fighting. Shout out everybody else. That was the worst main event I've ever seen. I've been Evan from Lonely Snow, the podcast. Peace.